Walking Dead Rewrite, Season 7, Episode 16, The Last Stand. Now, this episode would start and you would have Rick and Carl that are walking in the past. And we see Carl as a little kid as they're walking up this farm. And then we cut to the current timeline and Rick sees his son now preparing for war and getting a gun ready. And it's just like, man, how far this has changed from, just a little kid, innocent little kid, that type of thing. And now he is a full soldier about to go out and fight. And Rick, seeing this, just takes a deep breath and he's just like, he just realizes, man, how different things are. And that is the point of this scene and this flashback that we just saw, is that really, man, things have changed and not for the better. Now we cut over to the graves and we do see the names Tobin and Cal that are there. And basically all the characters are kind of gathered around and it's just kind of this music montage as we see, kind of the burial, that type of thing. Now we have the characters getting ready to come out and basically they're, about ready to go to battle. And of course they're talking. And then we have Dwight that suggests, that we do this, and that. And, the characters don't really want to listen to him, but they think that, maybe Dwight has kind of some inside info. So Daryl has a chance to talk with Dwight and Daryl says, he's like, nah, I get it. You were doing what you had to do. But if you screw up out there, it'll be the last time you do. And Dwight's just like, fair enough. And Daryl walks off and Dwight walks off as well. Now Morgan would be just kind of talking about how, Rick, and him, they both lost so much, so many good things. And basically, he'd be like, Rick's just like, we haven't lost everything though. Not yet. And he's like, we will. And we can't go back. So let's just finish this. And then we see them walking out and Rick and Michonne are holding hands and the characters are about ready to fight. Now, after the intro, Negan would be waking up, and then we would be cutting back and forth between that and when he's giving the speech to his saviors. Now, this was a deleted scene that I actually think really does work, and I think it actually does work to kind of build up the war. And I really like how Negan's, saying, Rick, he doesn't, he has no idea what's coming, and he's like, we are saviors. And then, the entire crowd cheers. And I personally really like this scene, and I'm definitely going to keep this in here as kind of the build up before the saviors go to war. Now, Rick and the rest of his people taking out the characters here on the road, I actually like this scene a lot because in this moment, we don't really know anything. We don't know that Negan has a trap. However, in this version, Negan would say in the car as he's talking with Gavin, he would be like, oh, well, Rick and the others, they don't know what's coming for them. And I would have Morgan, who I think this is an amazing scene just for kind of some gore effects, having him just be like, I surrender, and he would still kill him and then slit the guy's throat and stuff. I think that is just absolutely crazy. However, no hallucinations. That is the one thing about this. You would just see Morgan kill this guy and move on. There's no need for any kind of stupid hallucinations, whatever the case may be. So basically, then we would get to see the characters and, they'd be like, okay, that's where Negan will be. And Negan be talking, with Gavin in the car as that's, going on. And Negan, he has kind of this bigger plan and he's tricking Rick and them. That's where they think I actually am. But really, I'm going to be down this way. So they're going to kind of try to trap Rick and the others. That's basically what he's saying to Gavin in the car as they're driving. So Rick and the others are like, okay, let's go. And that's where Negan will be. That's it. And basically Rick and the others are apparently now walking into a trap, except this is the first time we're hearing about it. Now, on their way to the battle, we do also have, just like in the original version, they spot a zombie herd and they're just like, oh man. And, Rick's just like, things are changing. Let's go. Now, back at the hilltop, you would have Eduardo, you would have Gabriel, and you would have some of the other kids and, some of the weaker ones kind of staying back. However, Eduardo and Gabriel would be mainly the two that would be back at the hilltop, and they would be kind of, keeping the place safe. And yes, in this version, they would be in the woods, and they would be waiting for the saviors to kind of come. Now, basically, in this version, you would have the saviors that would kind of be arriving, and you would have Gabriel right in the front defending the kids, which I think would be absolutely amazing. Kind of like how he did in the original Walking Dead in the season 10 finale. finale, basically, kind of, off into the woods, kind of, protecting everybody, that type of thing. Eduardo is kind of his backup, and, a few other kind of red shirts, that type of thing. And basically they would be kind of waiting for the Saviors to show up, and there'd be kind of some intense music kind of building here. Now, we would get to see Rick and the others, and they'd be walking out into the field, and then they would hear, and Negan would call out to Rick. Now, after the commercial, Negan would say, I ambushed your ambush with an even bigger ambush. And he's like, how about you step out and face us? And he's like, oh, I'm everywhere, Rick. And he's just kind of all, kind of cocky about it. And then basically he would show his people, of course, pointing the guns at Rick and them. Now, in the original version, there was just it felt like a million friggin' Saviors surrounding them. And it's just okay, I just don't understand how this is the end of the war and there's all these Saviors. So in my version, I would have about, a good 30 to 40 Saviors, which is still a decent amount, absolutely. But it would be around, the same amount of people that Rick has out here in the field. So the numbers would be a bit more even. There wouldn't be as many Saviors, but they would still be pointing guns at Rick and them. But it wouldn't be enough to surround them, because I feel like that in the original version just felt completely unrealistic, that there would be still that many Saviors at the end of a war. I do not think that makes any sense whatsoever. So basically in this version, they would be pointing their guns at Rick and the others, and you would have Negan that would count down, and it would be very intense. The countdown would be starting, and it'd be like, oh man, what's gonna happen, as our characters are kind of just, putting their guns up, and then basically Negan would be like, 3, music builds up, 2, continuing to kind of build up. And then before Negan says 1, he notices Dwight in the crowd, and he's just like, what? He's just shell-shocked when he sees Dwight. And that's when Negan just gets super mad, and he says, 1. And that's the cue for the Saviors, and they start firing at Rick and the others, and some of Rick's people do go down. However, some of the others take cover, and they drop, and basically, some of Rick's fighters do go down, but then Rick and the others start firing back and forth at them, and it's just this, massacre. Some of Rick's people go down, some of the Saviors go down, and then a lot of the Saviors start running out of ammo, and Rick and the others start seeing this, and they're kind of low on ammo as well, and then it's just this kind of oh crap, what's going on here? And basically then the Saviors drop their guns, because they know that, the ammo is not going to do it. They're almost out anyway. And a lot of the Saviors drop their guns, and they go in there with weapons, swords, arrows, stuff like this, and they literally charge Game of Thrones style against Rick and the others, and Rick and the others have to get some of their hand-to-hand, combat type weapons, and basically they got to get ready. So basically now the Saviors are running towards what's left of Rick and the others. A lot of the red shirts have been killed, but Rick and the others are still, kind of remaining standing. And then for the limited amount of ammo Rick and the others have left, they do shoot some of the Saviors that are kind of running towards them, but it's not enough to take all of them out, not even really a quarter of them get shot by Rick and the others, and then Rick and the others have to take some of their kind of, knives, weapons, that type of stuff, Michonne with her sword and stuff, and basically they have to, kind of get ready to fight hand to hand against the Saviors that are running towards them that they couldn't shoot with their guns because they're now out of ammo as well. So basically Rick and Daryl and, Glenn and the others have to fight Game of Thrones style with no guns, no nothing, against the Saviors that are charging at them. So then we get some amazing and gory kills, as we have Michonne that starts slicing them with her sword as they start coming for them, and it's just this massacre. The Saviors are just running for our characters. It's like freaking Game of Thrones, as they are all just being annihilated basically. However, a lot of Rick's people are dying. However, it's not really main characters, it's just kind of red shirts at the moment, but basically they start fighting, and it's just this back and forth fight. And basically then we cut back over to Hilltop, and then Gabriel says, as they're all up there with their guns, give it another second, and then explosives go off, and we find out that Gabriel and the others actually did set up some explosives in order to kind of trap the Saviors, and now the Saviors have been blown up, except in this version, Gabriel and the others were the ones that planned this. So that was kind of their plan, is to kind of lure them out, and then of course, have them blow up, that type of thing. So very, very interesting stuff, and definitely Gabriel is very, very awesome for this, and definitely Gabriel, definitely quick thinking, and definitely a very, very awesome decision, and a good plan by by our survivors. Now, our characters would be covered in blood, and you would have a bunch of saviors that would be down, and, they'd be killing a few of the others or whatever. Jesus would ninja kick one, and, the guy would go down, and basically he would stab him in the neck and stuff like that. And it would just be like, oh man, like this is kind of a massacre here, as our characters have kind of just fought. And basically Negan and some of the other like 20 some, kind of remaining saviors would be on the top of the hill. And basically those would be the ones, that didn't go out there and fight. And that is all that's left of the saviors. And basically Negan decides to walk down to Rick. And Rick looks at this and he tells his people to, kind of be ready. And basically Rick and Negan both start, walking up to each other, and they are going to meet about halfway through, a halfway, in between each group, in between the saviors on one side and our survivors on the other side. And basically Rick and Negan walk up to each other, and it's just this moment of like, oh, what are they going to say to each other, that type of thing. So Rick is covered in the savior's blood, obviously, and he walks up to Negan, and it's just this moment of just like, oh, what is going to happen between these two? Negan is obviously very upset, and Rick is obviously very upset as well too, but how is everything going to go down? So basically in this version, you would have Negan that would say, after all this, why don't we just call it a day, Rick? You come work for me, I can go home and screw a few of my wives, and things will go good. And it'd just be like, oh man, Negan, honestly, like, he's still trying after all of this. And Rick would just look at him and be like, you don't realize how stupid you are, do you? And, it'd be a back and forth. And basically, it would be just like the comics. I feel like the TV show really made it to where it wasn't as epic, but in this version, I would have word for word basically what was in the comics about how, Rick has all these ideas about all these communities and all these kind of plans and stuff like that. And you guys know Negan's just like, eventually, it takes a while, but Negan's just like, and he kind of actually thinks about it. And, he's like, okay, maybe. And then when the time is right, Rick slits Negan's throat. And it's just like, what? And Negan's like, oh, look what you did. And then it's just like, oh, this just moment of like, oh, wait, did Rick just kill Negan? Now, just like the comics, Dwight would run up and grab Lucille, and that is what would break up the fight. And he would say, stand down. Negan has fallen. The war is over. And the rest of the saviors, seeing this, decide to put their weapons down and basically surrender to Michonne, Daryl, and Glenn and the others that, obviously on the other side, as Negan goes down and he is defeated by Rick. And, Negan basically goes down, and then Rick turns around to all of his people behind him, and he says, save him. And, Michonne's just like, why? And Rick's just like, save him. And Rick is just like looking at everybody, and he's like, the rest of the saviors, put your hands down. We're all going to go home now. Negan's alive, but his way of doing things is over. Anyone that can't live with that will pay the price. I promise you that. Any person that lives in peace and fairness, who would find common ground, this world is yours by right. We are life. And then he would point to the herd. That's death. And it's coming for us. Unless we stand together, we go home. And then the work begins. The new world begins. All this is just what was. But there's got to be something after. And it would just be like this moment where Rick is like, he has a change of heart. He realizes how bad things got for Negan here and how bad things got for everybody because of this war. And he has this kind of moment where he actually does kind of think, you know what? There is a way to make this work. We can rebuild. We can do this stuff. And that is what this speech is basically saying. So Negan is alive and they have spared his life. And we get to see Rick say, my mercy prevails over my wrath. And obviously this is a reference to earlier in the season when they heard Sadiq. So is this maybe a kind of, also kind of a foreshadow that maybe they'll try to find Sadiq at some point, because he is still out there. But either way, Rick has saved Negan and Rick has ended the war, but kept Negan alive. And he is going to start what he can of a civilization in some shape or form. So basically, we would have Hilltop, we would have the characters all, kind of just, taking the shields off of the cars and stuff like that. And it would just kind of be showing that, yep, the war is over. Everybody is trying to rebuild now. We would get to see some of our characters, kind of deliver some goods to some of the sanctuary. And, we get to see that the wives are free to, do whatever they want now, which is absolutely really awesome to see. And basically, they don't have to be dressed in these, black, like dresses anymore. And it is actually a really cool, thing to see this. And I always like this in the original version. And basically, they are all kind of trying to rebuild, and we've only got like a couple dozen saviors left, but like in terms of fighters, and then the rest are kind of just people that obviously weren't fighters, just workers and stuff like that are at the sanctuary, and they're going to try to make the sanctuary work. So then we actually see that the person that is in charge of the sanctuary is Dwight. It seems like he is the one that is going to be kind of staying there as kind of a leader type of deal at the sanctuary, which is going to be very interesting for his character going forward. But the question is, at some point or another, will he try to find Sherry? This is not addressed here, but it's definitely a question we will have in what comes next. Now, Negan would be, of course, here, and you would have Michonne and Rick would basically be like, yeah, we can open up the stitches for a little while just to remind him, and basically, like, they're like, you alive is going to help people, see that things have changed, they're keeping you breathing, and, maybe, for after all this, maybe you'll be good for something. And, it'd just be this moment where they'd be like, yeah, you're going to rot in a cell for the rest of your life, day after day. And he's like, that's the part you'll play. So, yeah, it's kind of just like this moment of like, oh man, like, is Negan going to get out, or is this his life now? We'll have to see. But definitely a kind of moment of just like, man, Negan has hit rock bottom. We also have Gabriel at his burned out church, and basically we've got him kind of saying like, he's like, thank you, just for kind of, the Lord keeping him alive basically throughout this entire war. And definitely a very, kind of touching scene here with Gabriel, and we'll have to see if they may potentially rebuild the church. Hopefully they will. We'll have to see how that goes as well too. And we will see that Alexandria is basically, trying to kind of be, kind of fixed, as we can kind of see our characters back at Alexandria now, which is definitely very cool to see. And we'll have to see if they rebuild Alexandria, but it seems like they most likely will. Now, basically, we would have Dwight, and he would be in the woods, and you would basically have him walk around this kind of cabin and this kind of wooded area, and basically he would have Lucille over his shoulder, and he would have a crossbow on him as well. And Dwight would be walking around aimlessly in the woods, and he'd be, looks like he's kind of trying to go somewhere. And we're just like, why is he walking around with Lucille over his shoulder and, just kind of walking aimlessly? And he basically kind of walks off, and we just focus on this barn, and it's just like, okay, why are we focusing on this barn for so long? And then it cuts to many years later, and we get to see that basically, yeah, some time has passed here, because now this barn is super destroyed and super kind of just, just done after all this time in the world. And, basically it's kind of just not really barely even kind of lasting anymore, basically. And we can just see kind of how decayed everything is. And basically then we have 5 unknowns that start killing some walkers. We have Magna, we have Luke, we have Kelly, we have Connie, and we have Yumiko, and they are all basically very, kind of, struggling. Yumiko hurts herself, of course, and she is kind of, injured here, of course, and basically they get surrounded, and we're just like, oh man, so this is going to be, this is going to be Magna from the comics. And then we get a few gunshots that, of course, fire, and they have a clearing, and basically they're like, run, like, get out of here, that type of thing. And they run a good ways into the woods, and we're kind of wondering, okay, where are these gunshots coming from? And then we get the reveal of a younger man and a little girl basically standing there in front of Magna's group, and they're introducing themselves, and it's like, okay, well, what's your name? And basically we would have the guy that would say, I'm Carl, and we would have the little girl that would pick up the hat, and she would say Judith Grimes, and you would have brother and sister introducing themselves to Magna and the others, and it would just be this moment where it'd be like, okay, some time has passed.
They're just milling around. You ever see him do this before?
No. We should go. There's a storm coming.
This wasn't a normal herd.
So that was The Walking Dead, Season 7, Episode 16, The Last Stand. The war has ended. We've had a time jump. We have a lot of things that are kind of being set up here, and we have a lot of things that will continue in the next season of The Walking Dead rewrites. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This was the end of All Out War and the end of Season 7. And stay tuned, because coming up later this year will be The Walking Dead Season 8A rewrites. Thanks for watching.
Anybody out there?